From the Bare Knuckle Studios in Dallas, Texas, welcome to the Mike and Brian Show. And now, here are your hosts, Mike Coffin and Brian Lee.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode, did we decide it was 16?
What's going on? It is 16.
Episode 16.
Episode 16.
Wow. Mike and Brian Show.
Yeah,
and we've got Bernie Diamond
Hello.
and Dr. Douglas Swan here with us again.
Thank you for
Regevity.
joining us.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
Thank you for having us again.
Yeah.
Excited to be
16.
here.
This is good stuff.
I know.
Yeah.
They keep rolling, and they keep
Yes.
getting better and better. Thank God. It's mostly because of Janet, though.
Yeah. She does that.
She does good. So, we wanted to get together because last time on episode 12, we had a good talk at the end of the show about nutrition. And, I think it kind of occurred to us how important nutrition is to stem cell treatments and just overall health. And then we went to your discussion. When was that we live streamed? Was that Wednesday or Thursday?
This past Wednesday.
Wednesday,
Or
yeah.
last week Wednesday.
And the
Last
content
week.
was amazing on the live stream.
Yeah.
And so we thought, we kind of deep dive into some of the stuff.
I mean, the nice thing about the seminars that you all do is that there's slightly different updates every
Yeah.
time that we've gone or listened to even some of the other live stream that you've done in Fort Worth. And it's the cool thing about this area for me is that we've done all this research for
Yeah.
a really long time, like over a decade for me.
Right.
I mean, I've been trying to figure out like how to do it, and then there's all of these discoveries that are consistently
That's amazing.
coming
to me.
out.
There's
Yeah.
always, so I'm like looking online and I see all these new research papers that are
Mm-hmm.
coming out on plant-based and other things, right? And showing
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, this is amazing stuff. And it's real hard science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be interesting to sit down because I know you guys do stem cell treatments here and kind of go through a little bit of the history of how, doing stem cell treatments led you to the nutrition aspects. And of course we have supplementation aspects and things like that, because I know from a medical and health standpoint, the supplementation is really, really interesting, even if people aren't getting stem cell treatment.
Sure.
So maybe we can kind of deep dive a little bit how one led to the other. a
Yeah,
little
sure.
bit.
First, the name itself, Regevity, is a combination of regeneration and longevity. So, we pursue and we provide stem cell therapy, but also we want not only people to feel healthy in their joints, but also feel healthy overall. Okay? And we believe the nutrition is a big component of it. There's many clinics that are now offering stem cell therapy, but that's less than half the game. So you can harvest the stem cells and then inject it into the joint, and then you're almost asking a magical thing to happen. Basically turning the time backwards and regenerating the damaged tissues. But I always give an example. If you plant a tree in a concrete, it's not going to thrive. It's not going to grow. It's just going to die. You got to select the right soil and the right fertilizers for it to thrive, right? So our body is the soil, and we have to optimize it. And then after that, then you can put in the proper fertilization or supplementation so that those stem cells can thrive, and creating the environment where those stem cells can do its job, regenerating the damaged tissues. So that's always been our belief. And so you got to approach it from the comprehensive approach. So that's why we have the 4 pillars. So utilize the real stem cells so that you can maximize the effect, and then provide the right nutrition to enhance the soil, our body, then creating the right environment. And then, I gave stats last time. By the time you're 40, you lose about 50% of your ability to produce nitric oxide, which is one of the most important messenger in your body to activate and mobilize the stem cells. So if you lose 50%, most people who are undergoing stem cell therapy are around 40, 50, 60. And by the time you're 60 years old, you lose 85% of your ability to produce nitric oxide. So you can put the stem cells all you want.
Right.
If you don't activate it, it's just going to sit there and die.
Yeah.
Right? And then providing the right supplementation, because most Americans are so deficient in micronutrients. And that's why we also include not only elevating the nitric oxide, but also the proper micronutrients in the supplements to maximize the effect. Okay?
It's so sad that I'm over 40 now, and I'm in this group that everything is depleted now. You start getting 40 years old,
And it affects me because I'm going to be 47 next month.
Yeah.
Right? And then so by the time I'm 50 in next 3 years,
Right.
statistically, hopefully that's not the case with me because I do everything that I can. My goal is to live at least until 100 years old, but not only living longer, but living healthier and living younger. And so that's where a lot of my research. Initially, I did it for myself, but then and we try to incorporate that into my surgical patients as well as the stem cell patients.
I think that's like a huge part of it is that we don't want to just live longer. We want to live better. Like I don't mind being 90 or 100 years old as long as I'm up here functionally,
Yeah.
right? And then I kind of want to just go away.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things too is that I think that some of these cases with like medical issues happening is happening in younger people. I mean, it happened to me when I was in my 20s, and even visiting some of my friends and talking to them, and they're around my age where they were talking as soon as I started sharing about some of the content that you've shared with us. They opened up about their medical issues that they've had, and it's crazy because it's younger and younger, right?
Yeah.
I have a good friend. He's on hypertension medicine, all these other things, and he's younger than me. And he started 10 years ago. For God's sake,
What's really, really crazy, and excuse my voice, but what's really crazy is we look at the exterior of somebody, and you see these really great in shape people, and you can't see what's going on inside, and no one is paying attention to that. And so that's one of the things that even learning with Dr. Juan, how important the health and nutrition is. And so it's a game changer because the same thing, you see these younger people who are dying sooner. They should be living longer.
Right. Well, especially with all the knowledge we have now. And, one of the things that Brian and I have tried to do is testing. Like like the test strips we have here for the nitric oxide and blood testing and glucose testing and stuff like that, because you can hide, like you can look good and hide it. Right.
Yeah.
But what's happening below the surface is what's important.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, that's why I give example. I use Bob Harper. Excuse me for using him all the time, but he was one of the celebrity trainer for The Biggest Loser, right? And then the creator for Biggest Loser is now plant-based nutrition, living that lifestyle. But Bob Harper, he looked really fit. He's lean, muscular, but at age 51, he had a massive heart attack.
Oh my God.
And he was so lucky. He was basically dead. And he was lucky that there was a cardiologist working out at the gym that was right next to him and then start resuscitating him. And then the gym had the AED. They were able to cardiovert him and bring him back to life.
Wow.
And then now, that he completely changed his, lifestyle and his diet. Because what he thought, just by looking good outside does not mean that you're healthy inside. You could be rotting inside also.
And I think the same goes for just young people in general. Not only just like fit people, but somebody who's 20, 25, 30 years old. They are young and they shouldn't have to worry about it. But if you've been not properly, not had proper nutrition that whole time, then you could have a lot of bad stuff going on.
And that's saying a lot just from my own experience, because it's not like I stopped working out or stopped trying to take care of myself at some point. It's I was eating the sad diet, right? And then all of a sudden, and it just wasn't getting better.
So
It's crazy. So one of the things that I was wondering, as far as like some of the compounds that you mentioned that is in Nutrinox, right? So you shared your story about kind of how this is important, but I know that there was an interesting story that Bernie, you shared too, about the reason like you went out and researched that if there were any products out there actually that had a what do we call it? A clinically effective amount of
That was good.
Correctly dosed.
That was very, very well. So when we were putting it together, you got to excuse my voice again. I apologize. We were trying to find something that we could partner with, in a sense, a supplement for our patients. And everything we were finding was very underdosed, or it had some sort of stimulant in there, like a yohembine or caffeine. And the crazy part about that is we're trying to go for vasodilation, but the stimulants are vasorestrictors.
Right.
And we couldn't find anything. So Dr. Juan put it together, and that's how we came up with Nutrinox.
Yeah, I was just shocking because first I work out, but I don't spend most of my time at the gym, and I don't know too many bodybuilders or really big guys. They're not in my life. And then I found out after we formulated this, and realizing a lot of the bodybuilders or the people who are working out at the gym are using it as a pre-workout. And then when I looked at it, just like Bernie said, I was really surprised. There's caffeine and other stimulants were vasoconstrictors. that tells me that they just want people to feel something, feel jittery, so they feel like they've taken something and
like
it's
it worked.
working.
Right.
But it goes completely against what you're trying to achieve, right?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to achieve vasodilation, increasing the circulation to your muscles so it's stronger and you work more efficiently. But yet, you put some stuff to the vasodilate, but then you're also putting something to vasoconstrict. I mean, doing something completely opposite.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we really needed to develop our own that doesn't have any fillers, doesn't have any extra natural flavors. Natural flavor means chemicals,
right.
Yeah. And
Anytime you hear that,
Anything to
there's
trick your,
always
taste
some sort
buds.
of
yeah, because you can
unnatural
hire
flavor.
different companies to formulate a natural flavor for you. One, and they put things that are addictive, and then two, it kills your microbiome, gut bacteria.
Yeah.
So we want it to be as pure as possible.
Wow, I didn't know that. That actually
The gut
kills
biome
your-
stuff is becoming like big news right now. Everybody started to put the pieces together. I think that
Yeah.
the microbiome is so
Everything's
important.
been bro science for
exactly
years.
for years.
It's
Now we have
all-
real
I
science.
mean, it's the truth. You see some really in shape person, some bodybuilder, and you want it. And everything's anecdotal now. Well, they
Yeah.
heard this, they heard that, they're doing it that way, and it's crazy. It's nonsense. It does not make sense.
Yeah.
I think that's why we tested it. So the interesting thing about our experience with Nutrinox is that we actually purchased a couple other nitric oxide supplements and tried them
Tried 'em.
before.
Oh my God.
Right?
And
I mean, I was like down in a quarter of the bottle just to get some results.
Yeah.
You
so
know,
you took one we saw, and it was the recommended daily dosage was
400 milligrams.
which was how many pills?
Well, that was it
was like
two or
two
four
pills?
pills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many did you get to before you?
Oh my God, I had to take like 10 or 12 pills. I mean, it was crazy.
Well, the thing that blows me away about that too is that this product was rated 5 stars. I mean, and the thing is, I'm pretty sure that there's probably like you call it like a placebo effect where people are taking it.
Sure.
But then when we took it and actually tested it, it
Yeah.
didn't really come out the way that we would expect compared to Nutrinox, and that's
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
why that blew me away.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like everything on the market, like you said, the placebo effect. Every response we've gotten back from 100% of the people that have tried it and that we've tested on has been 5 stars without question, and they're giving us details on what they're feeling. They're feeling the vascularity. We're very, 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 very. We're clear to say you're not going to feel a stimulant. You're not going to want to throw a house around, and they all come back with the exact same results. They're feeling the pumps, feeling more energy, and it's consistent.
Yeah. But I think the most important thing is that our goal wasn't initially to develop a natural pump for pre-workout. Right. This was for medicine, right? And it is a supplement, but we wanted to develop something that is not only going to activate the stem cells. That is one of the most difficult and challenging thing to do. So, vasodilation itself, I mean, yes, you can do it if you give enough, whether it's an arginine or whether it's a citrulline. However, we wanted to do it for health reasons. So improving the cardiac health, improving the diabetes, helping patients with, mental fogginess, enhance their brain function. And then also if you improve the, cardiac health, it's also naturally going to improve your sexual health as well, because erectile dysfunction is usually the first sign that you have cardiovascular disease and people with low energy. But initial reason, the main motivation for us is to activate the stem cells.
Right.
I mean, that is at the top, right? That is the one of the most challenging thing to do.
Could you maybe go through just, for people that are listening maybe for the first time about nitric oxide and then kind of the cascade effects that it has inside the body? Because I know there's a guy who won the Nobel Prize for discovering this, but there's such an enormous amount of other chemical things happening inside the body.
Yeah.
Then it's so important. Maybe kind of go through it a little bit.
Sure. When they first discovered this, they discovered a gas that seems to vasodilate the arteries, and they called it the endothelial, the relaxing factor. Later on, they discovered that it was a gas and it's a nitric oxide. So one of the most important roles is nitric oxide. There's 2 different pathways where it can be developed. Number one is from the endothelium, which is the inner lining of your artery. There, it's where the nitric oxide gets produced. Okay? From the sheer stress of blood flowing through, that activates the endothelium and produces the nitric oxide. Okay? And then the nitric oxide, since it's a gas, it sips through the smooth muscle cells and then activates the second messenger called cGMP. and that's what actually activates the smooth muscle cells to be relaxed. So then the vasodilation happens. The another way to develop the nitric oxide is through nutrition, which is one of the most important aspect, especially for people who are aging, who's got atherosclerosis and vessel damage. And then, as I mentioned, by the time you're 60, you lose 85% of your ability to produce nitric oxide from your endothelium. And you really have to rely on your nutrition in order to produce nitric oxide. Because if you don't have nitric oxide in your system, there's a cell death, and then no vasodilation, no circulation means death. Okay? So the food that has the most amount of nitric oxide is dark green leafy vegetables. Okay? And so when you consume them, and then you take in the nitrate, and then it gets converted by the oral bacteria. So oral hygiene is extremely important. And also, there's a strong correlation of people who are utilizing mouthwash with cardiac disease. And this is one of the main reasons, is that not only you're killing off the bad bacteria, you're also killing off good bacteria as well. So then in your mouth, it's actually from the saliva, you produce you excrete the nitrate. And the nitrate mixes in with your oral bacteria that converts to nitrite. Okay? And then nitrite goes into your stomach, and when it's acidic, that gets converted to nitric oxide. So also then patients who are taking either proton pump inhibitors or Pepsid, Nexium, and elevating the pH level, you're going to lose that ability, so they're not going to be producing nitric oxide as well. And it gets and then turns into a gas, gets absorbed into your system. And whatever that doesn't turn into nitric oxide, then it gets absorbed either as a nitrate or nitrite in your duodenum, and then gets recirculated into your salivary gland. And then when you're eating something and then you're salivating, and then that mixes in with the gut bacteria, and then when you swallow the saliva, then it gets converted into nitric oxide again.
So I think I remember on one of your discussions you were talking about the smoothies with the greens, and that you kind of leave it a little bit chunky, I guess maybe is the right word, because you need to chew it. And I didn't understand that that's such an important part of getting the nutrients out of the leafy green vegetables and all that stuff. Is that what's really happening? Sort of prying it out somehow or smushing it out?
Yes. So that's a great point. So first, there's a lot of juicing companies out there, right? And so they're just extracting some nutrients. Is that healthy? Yeah, kinda. However, you're throwing away the most important aspect of the fruits and vegetables, which are the fiber. Right? They get extract at the pulp and they throw it away and they give you the juice. So I don't recommend juicing at all, because it's a glorified sugar water. Right? And then the next best thing is the blending. And I don't like to blend for a long time because it turns into almost juice. Yeah, you do retain fiber, but also a lot of the sugar gets separated from the fiber also. And so then it elevates the glycemic index much faster. So then that's one of the reasons why I don't like to blend it for a long time. And then also I wanted to I want to chew and then break away the fiber, break the cell wall. Okay? So then it also has an opportunity to mix in with the bacteria as well. Because if you drink it, then it's going to go into your stomach, and then in your duodenum, you'll be able to absorb the nitrate and nitrite, and then it will recirculate also. But I want to maximize that opportunity as well. But also when you're chewing, then your body naturally releases the enzyme, and it triggers the brain that you are eating something, and then so it's a digesting time. And so I that's why I like smoothies. But also you just have to be cautious. Don't just gulp it down. Just sip it. And then at least within 30 minutes, rather than just drinking it within 5 minutes.
I guess right.
It's like goes back to chewing your food.
Chewing your food.
Yeah. And then also one other thing is, because I put in a lot of dark green leafy vegetables and cruciferous vegetables like kale, Swiss chard, spinach, and broccoli sprouts, right? And so what it does is that it breaks up the cell wall and releases the enzyme. It's called myrosinase. It mixes in, and then the byproduct is the sulforaphane, which has a very anti-cancer property. And then also helps with the mental acuity and cognitive function. And some of them, it's not broken away. I want to chew some more, so make sure that the sulforaphane gets produced as well.
Yeah. Now, I noticed, so this is the Nutrinox here, if you guys are curious, that in here we've got 3,600 milligrams of citrulline. is like because this is a supplement you should take daily, right?
Yes.
Is that based on like research that's kind of the amount that you need like for general health, or like where did I know there's other ingredients in here we'll go through a little bit, but because I like the idea that this is a general health sort of supplement, right? And I have to believe that if somebody's in their 20s and they haven't been eating well, that their arterial walls are probably blocked.
Yeah.
Right. So even somebody younger could benefit from something like this.
They've actually done studies where the kids between age 12 and 14, 65% of the kids between age 12 and 14 have early signs of atherosclerosis.
Jesus.
And 8% of kids between age 12 and 14 has a pretty moderate level of atherosclerosis.
What parents aren't realizing is that it's from the early age. Let your kids get some donuts here, Lunchables, all these little bull crap foods, and it's over the course of time that it just builds up and builds up and builds up. Yeah. Which it's crazy. It's happening so much faster now.
Much earlier.
Everything's more saturated. Just insane. It's processed. So.
Yeah. Damn it, I had donuts this morning.
Were they plant-based?
Killed myself a little bit. Plant-based donuts.
Plant-based donuts.
So the amounts in here, we've got 3,600 milligrams of citrulline, and you take one in the morning, one in the evening, and that's just for kind of daily health, right?
Yes,
kind of
for daily health.
Broad-based kind of daily health.
Yeah.
And so maybe we could go through. There's other vitamins and stuff in here. If you want to go through these, we can kind of understand how because I know there's kind of a cascading effect.
Yeah.
That without D3, D6, D9, or something like that, that it causes problems.
So before we get into that, just from a high level, I remember seeing a comment that you wrote on social media when people asked about the vitamins that were in here. You get your daily supply of vitamin D and B12 in this supplement.
Yes.
So if I am supplementing with like I'm taking other like a bunch of other pills, I can replace it with this.
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The stuff there is going to be full of fillers anyways.
Right.
That was the whole
Gotcha.
thing. Just to point out what Dr. Juan said, when this was formulated for our clinical or medical patients. So we didn't spare anything with it. There's no fillers. We didn't realize that it was going to be so beneficial to everybody. So it's the real deal, full of good stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so some of the reasons why we have those micronutrients is because it's critical that everyone should be taking it, whether they're taking Nutrinox or not. Okay? And the heart disease is the number one cause of death, right? Over close to about 1 million people every year die from cardiovascular disease. And so if we can enhance and improve the cardiovascular health, and many lives could be saved. And there's a significant ties also with diabetes. If you have diabetes, there's a reason why, because they injure the vessels, and then they may go blind, they have a kidney disease, heart disease, and heart disease is the number one killer. And in any race, right, and any gender, and cardiovascular health. So if you can improve that, and improve the nutrition to improve the cardiovascular health, then most likely you're also going to be improving your, preventing and suspending cancer, diabetes, autoimmune disease, a lot of other disease, the chronic disease that 80% of Americans are dying from. Right?
Wow. I see in here that we've got B6 and B12, and before we started with the podcast, we talked a little bit about people on plant-based, vegan, carnivores, all that stuff, and that everybody is a little bit deficient in some of these things, right? And it's kind of I guess it's a big problem for, like I said, cardiovascular health and stuff, which I didn't understand. My grandfather died of that, so I'm
absolutely
acutely interested in it.
Yeah. So one of the important thing is no matter what kind of diet you do, there may be some you may meet the minimum, but majority of Americans, 80 to 90% are deficient or not in the optimal range. Because if you're not in the optimal range, you're barely running, right? And so, especially for cardiovascular health, there's, vitamin B is extremely important, vitamin C is important, vitamin D is important. And most Americans, 43% of Americans are deficient in vitamin D3. And also 90% are not in the optimal range. Okay? And same thing with the B12 as well. So the B complexes are very important for endothelial health, because if you're deficient, especially in the B6, that's why it's in here, B12, and then also folic acid, which is the B9. So what studies have shown was the patients who have elevation of amino acid, homocysteine, which gets produced by methionine, Okay? Methionine for the cell reaction, and provides a methyl, which is a CH3, and then methionine turns into homocysteine. But then homocysteine has a very negative effect, which causes inflammation, endothelial damage. Those are the few things that actually happens. Okay? And so you want to make sure you want to decrease the homocysteine level. And there's a separate testing that you can do specifically for homocysteine. And then what the B vitamin does is basically it methylates it again, provides a CH3 so that it can regenerate the methionine. And there's a significant elevation of cardiovascular disease with patients who have elevated level of homocysteine, and then also Alzheimer's and dementia as well.
Wow.
So you want to make sure, but and that's one of the reasons, because having homocysteine elevates the plasma level of what they call asymmetric dimethylarginine, which is a direct inhibitor of nitric oxide synthase that produces nitric oxide. So elevation of homocysteine, yes, and so decreases the nitric oxide production, which prevents you from vasodilating and all the other positive effects of nitric oxide, right? And then on top of that, it creates inflammation. And nitric oxide also stimulates the stem cells. And within the circulatory system, what's critical is regenerating the endothelium cells, right? So it activates the progenitor cells of endothelium, okay? So just let me know if I'm going,
No, it's
nerding
perfect,
out
actually.
here too much.
Yeah,
I'm drawing the picture in my mind of this.
My
of this
college,
reaction.
13th grade anatomy is coming back.
So if there's an inflammation, there's damage, then you need new endothelial cells to regenerate so that it can produce nitric oxide. But since you're depleting yourself of nitric oxide, it can't stimulate the stem cells to regenerate the endothelium. So you go into this perpetual cycle.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons why we need to make sure that we have optimal range of B complexes.
So the vasodilation that happens is essentially getting the nutrients to the place that your body actually needs them. Is that on a high level? Does that sound about right, or did I just completely miss it? I'm like, so the blood vessels get bigger, and the blood gets there.
Bigger vessels, good.
And stem cells grow. That sounds
My Neanderthal interpretation.
So, not just the nutrient, but most importantly, oxygen, right?
Right.
Right? Because without oxygen, your cells are going to die and you're going to die. And so that's another very, very important.
Yeah.
But also, for cardiovascular health, it needs to repair itself so that you don't develop heart attack or stroke. So if your vessel's inner lining is significantly inflamed, and then you got the atherosclerosis, the cholesterol that's seeping into the endothelium, then your immune system recognizes that and then goes in and then turns into a macrophage, which basically takes up the cholesterol, right? Like LDL. And then it turns into something called foam cells, which causes a lot of inflammation and then really thins out the inner lining of the arterial wall. And then the sheer force of the blood that's rushing through tears it. That's what the heart attack is. This heart attack is not just a plaques overforming and then developing significant stenosis and completely closing off the arterial wall. Okay, what the heart attack is the inner lining breaks away, and then the whole clotting cascade happens, and then completely blocks the artery, and the blood can't flow.
It calcifies. Is that what I think I've heard that before. So like people that have had poor diet for an extended period of time, like their blood vessels will actually get rigid.
Get rigid?
Yeah. And I think they call it calcification.
Yeah, it's called calcification.
Okay.
And then also your smooth muscle cell goes into the inner lining, and then I have a picture at our seminar shows that the healthy individual has a widely open arterial artery, and then somebody who's got plaque, and they have the wall thickens significantly, so that blood just cannot flow very easily. Okay, so the nitric oxide has the ability to heal the endothelium, so that we have patients who had significant heart disease, and then their vessels the artery was closing off, and then after being on proper nutrition, they've actually reversed, and then the stenosis just melts away. Wow. So the heart disease, the heart attack, that's why I say heart attack is a choice. You choose to have the heart attack once you know how to prevent it. And then almost everyone can reverse the heart disease.
It's amazing. And now there's a test you said there's for one of those traits that you said, the
homocysteine.
Homocysteine. So there's a test you can do separately for just homocysteine.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. So you can actually test for homocysteine, and it's typically not in the regular blood panel, but you can definitely ask your doctor to order it. And depending on your insurance, you may have to pay it separately. It may cost anywhere from $75 to $100, but
cares?
well worth it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you have elevated homocysteine, then you're at a higher risk of developing cardiovascular disease as well as dementia and Alzheimer's. Because like I said before, what's the point of living longer if you're just demented and don't even know that you exist?
Right.
Well, 1 in 5 elderlies that age 71 has dementia. 1 in 5.
That's amazing. So let me ask you this. I mean, this clearly the ingredients in here are helpful for everybody. My parents are older. They probably have some of these things and just don't know it. Are these good to give even to somebody like that who would be elderly and might have these issues they don't know about? They don't
Yeah.
my
Or
parents won't
younger.
get a freaking
Right.
test.
Like
Yeah.
age
Yeah.
range,
Right.
like what's the age range on who should be taking nitric
Is it
oxide?
just kind of
supplements?
everybody?
Basically, it's everyone, because you have the native stem cells that you need to constantly activate.
Yeah.
And because we're constantly getting insulted with different toxins, right? Even when you go outside, sun is great, but it's also radiation, and so you need to repair yourself. But especially for somebody who's above age 40, definitely need to be on it, because by the time you're 40, as I mentioned, you lose 50% of your ability to produce nitric oxide. Somebody who's taking proton pump inhibitors or antacids or things like that. Somebody who may have a poor oral hygiene. Somebody also who wants to enhance their athletic performance, right? So, but anyone who's practically living and should really focus on nitric oxide. So whether it's supplementation, but also very important, most importantly, nutrition-wise, having enough dark green leafy vegetables.
Wow. I know, it's Mother's Day today when we're recording, and I'm going to go see my parents, and I'm taking them 2 bottles of this, right?
Yeah.
After hearing that,
one of the
because
best gifts you can give 'em.
I know for a fact they eat like crap. Sorry, Mom and Dad, if they watch. But they do. They eat like crap, and I'm 100% sure they need something like this.
Yeah.
So there's also let's see, citrulline malate, folic acid, pine bark extract,
vitamin
beetroot
C,
extract,
yeah,
and vitamin C.
Yeah.
So how and vitamin D. So how do all of these play together? I guess. So which components influence what, and how is that beneficial for everybody?
So there's so many different components, right? And they're still understanding. There are over 150,000 papers that were written just on nitric oxide.
Jesus.
So significant amount, and there's going to be significantly more. And every year they're finding out more. So in order to run the car, you got to have thousands of different parts, right? And they all have to function. Right. And so these are not necessarily everything, but some of the most important ones, the nutrients that you need to really activate. And then what we saw was what people are deficient of. And so we also included like vitamin C, for example. And, surprisingly, a lot of people are deficient in vitamin C also. But vitamin C is important because it actually elevates and activates the true cofactor called BH4. Right? And BH4, you need the BH4 in order to activate the nitric oxide synthase. They have to work together. And it helps there's several different theories where it helps preventing VH4 for being oxidized, but no matter what the mechanism is, it keeps the BH4 elevated, and then it couples with the nitric oxide synthase in order to produce the nitric oxide.
Is it safe to say that take somebody who's like say 50 or 60 years old, that no matter how much they eat, how good their nutrition is, that they still could really benefit from supplementation? I mean, you can eat as many leafy green because of the way that things decrease over time.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. So that's why, because even you eat a lot of dark green leafy vegetables, there's 2 different mechanisms to produce nitric oxide, right? So our body is made for that reason, not only orally but also through our artery, the endothelium, inner lining of the artery. And so chances are, if you're living, even you try to really live a healthy lifestyle, just from the stress of living, you are going to have some damage to your arterial wall. That's why supplementation is going to help.
Wow. And, I mean, that's the best, let's say, advice I've seen for like why just generally people should be taking this, for health reasons, once or twice a day. I know for a fact when I take something like this, especially this one, that I know is a huge increase in my mental clarity. That's the main reason I take it, to be honest. Is mental
I
clarity.
haven't felt anything from, I mean, aside from like the stimulants that they put in like pre-workout, because I did it mostly for like fitness and for those reasons. But then after taking this, I mean, I had stopped taking the old supplements because they were filled with so much stuff. I don't know what that's doing. I don't know if it's helping. Coffee seemed to do the same thing.
Yeah.
But then after taking this, the work output,
Oh my gosh,
it's about 120%.
Yeah.
I was actually really impressed with.
You know what's really cool with it is that, and this is one of the, and I'm seeing this over and over at the gym, multiple people taking it. And, they're first interested in it because it's a workout thing, right? And then I tell them, like, look, this is just a health supplement. Right. But when they start using it, they kind of like go up and then they just stay level for hours.
Yeah.
You got more blood flowing. Right?
Yeah.
So the whole
And not
whole
the
idea,
crash.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So the whole idea behind these pre-workouts, what they're supposed to be doing, putting enough blood flowing there, so you're getting those pumps, but it's decreasing the blood flow because of the caffeine and stimulants. Sorry. So now you're getting it just direct input of it. You're getting more than clinical dosage is what you'd be getting.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah, and so you talked about the brain clarity.
clarity,
And I think you mentioned, when you start eating salad, I mean,
Right.
your
It went
cognitive
way
function
up.
improved, right? Is because you're also increasing the blood flow. So just from vasodilation alone, it increases the blood flow not only to your muscle but also to your brain as well, right?
Yeah.
And then also you have the vitamin D. The vitamin D not only helps you increase the nitric oxide production by stimulating the nitric oxide synthase, but also there's some receptors in your brain cells that connects with the vitamin D and then helps and stimulates the brain cells to produce nitric oxide synthase. I mean, nitric oxide through nitric oxide synthase as well. So then that further increases the blood flow to the brain. That's another reason why we have vitamin D in there.
Right.
So there's many reasons, and especially vitamin D. There's a strong tie with the deficient patients with the vitamin D deficient patients with early mortality, and the people who are at a high level of vitamin D tends to live much longer. And we all have the ability to make vitamin D. However, we don't spend, one, enough time outside, and then two, we may not be getting the right UV ray at the right time, at the right direction. So we lose the ability to produce the vitamin D. And most people are spending their time inside these days, right? So whether you are, plant-based, or whether you are omnivore, it doesn't matter. Everyone should be supplementing the vitamin D.
Yeah.
So, an interesting thing that you mentioned is that so from like a natural standpoint, right? Like we might not be getting the right type of UV rays or whatnot. Some of the other compounds in here, where did people used to get them before? Say, like for example, I know B12. It was something with the way that it's because food is processed the way that it is that we don't get it the way that we used to, like before processing existed. But say like some of the like beetroot extract or citrulline malate or pine bark extract, like those things, where did we get those before Nutriodox, before industrialization and processing?
Yeah, I mean most people got it from the whole food, and then as the whole society became industrialized, everything changed. Even the food itself, the nutrition from the food itself changed, right? The food today is nothing like food, let's say 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, and it has changed. And more people 54% of American calories are coming from processed food. And so it's not obviously nutritious, right? And then 32% from the animal products. Only 11% is coming from vegetables and fruits. And ketchup is within that category. Ketchup is actually considered vegetable. Okay? So probably people are getting more calories from ketchup than vegetables or fruit. That becomes a huge problem. And then 4% of the calories are coming from the whole grain. And it's a processed food. If you just eliminate all the processed food, if you throw away anything that's in box and has more than 5 ingredients, it should be thrown away. And it should be either whole or minimally, refined type of food. That should be what you should be consuming.
There was a student that came up just this last week, and he started using this as well, and loves it. But he grew up on in a small town, like a farming community, and he grew up with whatever they grew in the area is what they ate, and then he got older, moved away, city, blah blah blah, and he goes, I started having all these problems and eczema and issues and everything like that, right? And he went through and kind of figured out that it was his nutrition because it had changed so much since he was a kid. So, you've been talking about plant-based, and he goes, man, we were farming all the time and we ate all the stuff that was around in the area. And, maybe you could go through like what plant-based diet is versus vegan versus omnivore and some of these other things. Because I think the terms kind of mess people up a little bit. They don't understand that vegan doesn't mean healthy.
Or whole food plant-based doesn't
what is
mean
whole
that you're
food?
shopping at Whole Food.
That's come up more than once.
It came up a lot.
I bet you they're loving the marketing on
That
that.
is
like,
great marketing,
I
right?
already do the whole
Way to
food
go,
plant-based
Amazon.
diet. I
Get all my milk from there. All my milk from there is fine.
Yeah, so I like to first describe our anatomy, right? So the carnivores, way they're designed, like the lion, they have a huge canine, and then way their jaw moves, they only move vertically, okay? And they're designed to grab the meat, tear it, and swallow. They don't even chew. And their stomach is significantly more acidic than ours. And so they're able to process and digest the food. And their digestive tract is really short, and so they just throw them out as quickly as possible, because once you have digested, it's toxin, right? Versus human is a herbivore, right? So we have the ability to grind, not only chew up and down, but also grind it sideways, because our teeth was designed to eat plants. Right? And then once we digest them, our stomach is not as acidic. And then we also don't have the ability to process all the plant, because we rely on gut bacteria. We have a synergistic relationship with them. And our gut digestive system is significantly longer than carnivores. Okay? And so, when we eat, and we don't have the ability to pull in all the necessary nutrients from plant food either, because humans have about 17 genes that can metabolize the fiber. But then we carry the microbiome, gut bacteria, that has about 60 to 100,000 genes that has the ability to metabolize the fiber. And then from that, they extract out all the necessary nutrients. When they study the byproducts of the metabolites from the fiber that gut bacteria has metabolized, it actually looks very similar to different organic drugs.
Really?
Right? So our gut bacteria is really the one that's controlling our health. That's why you have to feed the gut bacteria. When you have processed food that doesn't have any fiber, when majority of your diet is of the animal product, which doesn't have any fiber, you're depriving the nutrition to the gut bacteria. So then it's gonna start coming much, much closer to you, and then trying to basically eat you alive, right? And you mentioned one of your students who used to be at the farm, then moved to the city, right? And so by doing that and changing the diet habit, he's going to change the gut bacteria also. So when you look at the second half of the most of the autoimmune disease that people face, rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto thyroiditis, and the other autoimmune disease really didn't exist, before 1900s. But starting from 1950s, it started climbing and elevating just at a skyrocketing rate. And because more and more every year people are consuming a processed food, more animal products. We consume more animal products than 100 years ago, more than ever before. And those are the part of the reason why, because our gut health is just deteriorating. And then also people are so obsessed with sanitation. Right? Just hand sanitizers everywhere and showering multiple times a day. So as people start moving away from farm, dealing with the animals, or farming, getting their hands into the soil, because our gut bacteria is actually soil bacteria.
Wow.
And they are exactly the same. And grazing animals get their gut bacteria because they're actually grazing, and then as they're eating plant, they're eating part of the soil, right? And then they're ingesting the bacteria, and that's their probiotics, right? But versus human these days, I mean, you go to the grocery store, you open up a box, and then it has no fiber, so you can't feed the gut bacteria. And people are washing their hands multiple times. And so I recommend people get a dog, garden, right? And then don't, every chance you get, you don't have to necessarily wash your hand, 100 times a day. You don't have to put alcohol in every, every time you touch somebody, right? And so those are the things that affects our health. And then also the gut health is specifically tied to our brain as well. Serotonin, for example, is a neurotransmitter. 80% of it is generated in our gut.
Really?
Right?
Oh,
Only
really?
20% in the brain. And so it doesn't necessarily cross the brain-blood barrier. However, there's a communication going on. Like, for example, the vagus nerve. There's a vagus nerve has both afferent and efferent, which means it sends a signal down and also it's able to receive the signal. And there's a direct connection with the gut. So there's a lot more research that needs to be done, more we need to find out. But by changing the microbiome, it changes people's behavior, changes people's personality also.
Yeah, I think you said something there that just blew my mind a minute ago. You said feed the gut bacteria. And I was like, holy crap, that's like 50% of what's happening, if not more, right? So you're eating, but you're not really eating for you. You're actually eating for them.
Yeah.
These little bacteria things that are in us,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they want.
Exactly.
And
that's why, when some paleo diet folks are saying, well, I'm eating like our ancestor did, right? I just kind of laugh because with all the technology, they're not able to study do genetically study the Paleolithic stools, right? And show that they were eating about 100 to 150 grams of fiber each day. People ask me, because I'm plant-based, where do you get your protein? No, I said, more importantly, where do you get your fiber?
Yeah.
Right? And if you try to eat you should do a challenge. Try to eat 100 to 150 grams of fiber in a day, because you guys do different kinds of challenges.
Yes.
Maybe not around each other in a closed
Maybe we
room.
go on vacation for that one separately.
So does that mean eating just a pine bark directly?
Exactly.
It's
Just not a
150
tree.
grams of just
And you can't. It's next to impossible to eat anything else because you're just going to be so full, right?
Full of tree.
Yeah. And average Americans eat about 10 to 15 grams of fiber in a day. 10 to 15. The recommended dose for men is about 35 grams and women 28. Even then, that's fairly low.
So how much fiber is in like an apple?
4 grams.
Okay,
So you'd have
25
to
apples?
eat 25 apples.
Done. Apple challenge.
Challenge accepted.
Hashtag Apple challenge.
Might get a little too much sugar from there.
Yeah.
Little spike. That's okay.
And so, they looked at one civilization that still exists, which is the Hazads of the Tanzania. They're the closest thing to truly hunter and gatherers. They should be really called gatherers and hunters, because men go out every morning trying to hunt, and 95% of the time they come back empty-handed. Okay? And it's the woman that goes out and then collects the berries and other vegetables and mostly tubers. And their potatoes is the true ancient potatoes. Doesn't look anything like ours. It looks like actually a tree branch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they consume approximately about 100 grams of fiber each day.
Really?
Wow.
They don't have, in their civilization, there's no cancer and there's no heart disease.
Amazing.
Wow.
Okay.
If we look at and I don't know if you know this or not, but if you go back to our historical chart, right, where we evolved from, look at chimps and gorillas and things like that. Do you know the diets
They're
of
all-
our ancestors and stuff like that?
Yeah, most of the gorillas are 98% plant-based. They eat insects of each other, right? But and monkeys and majority of them, they're all plant-based.
Interesting.
Actually, you mentioned insects. I did have a question about that. So one of the solutions that I've kind of seen floating around on the internet to solving world hunger, right,
Yeah.
is consumption of insects.
Yeah.
So does that? It doesn't sound great. I think they turn it into like a powder or something. There's a
Yeah.
lot of Kickstarters and stuff out there. I was curious.
Yeah.
Is that
Cricket
protein?
powder.
Yeah, cricket powder. Really? Yeah, they really have that. Is that any better than eating animal protein? I'd imagine it's not.
Have you
'cause
studied
you're
cricket
eating-
powder?
Yeah, have you tried? Have we reached that point yet where we know?
There's plenty of the plant that has a protein. So until we are out
don't
of
eat
all
crickets,
plant,
thank God.
I don't think I'm
Stay
going to
away
be eating
from
crickets.
crickets.
Come on, Brian.
Y'all's next challenge
just
right
curious.
here.
Yeah,
Cricket
I'm not
challenge.
doing
It was
that
it
one.
was trending. It was trending on Facebook, and I was like, I wonder
Yeah.
if this is
The cricket
considered animal
challenge?
protein.
That's right after Tide Pod came crickets.
Oh man.
Damn millennials.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we're not going to do that one.
Yeah. Actually, I had another question. Whole food, plant based, and vegan.
Yeah, oh, yeah. It's a
So
great point.
what's
Yeah.
the difference between those two specifically?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question.
Yeah.
When you do whole food plant based, you're technically vegan because you're not eating animal products. So most of the vegan, their number one reason, I think it's a great reason to do it. It's ethical reason for the animals, compassion for the animals, because so many animals are being tortured, not only in this country, all around the world, to service the human beings, right? And so that's their main purpose. And there are healthy vegans and not so healthy vegans. And that's one thing that I like to really get vegans to understand overall is to achieve their mission, they really need to be healthy. And technically, potato chip are vegan, right? And Oreos are vegan. All the processed food is vegan. And you really need to be mindful. But if you work on your health, if your whole food plant-based is really focuses your health, and not eating the animal products because of your health. And you may also do it for our environment because it has a significant effect, but also for compassion for animal as well. But the whole food plant-based meaning you're eating food that is unrefined, okay? And then that is whole and the way it's originally made. So whether it's fruit, vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, right? And then legumes and beans, and that is whole food. And eating things that are minimally, because there are certain things that you may want to have because you develop the taste for it. Let's say, a certain type of bread, and try to eat whole grain so that it's at least minimally manipulated. And same thing with pasta. But what I try to do every day is majority of my diet to be, from the actual whole food. And if it comes from a box, I typically don't utilize it. And first thing I did was I threw away everything that was in my refrigerator or in my, pantry that was processed. And it's because processed food is a significant problem, right? Whether you're, a meat eater or you're vegan, whole food plant-based, you got to get rid of all the processed food. So the whole food plant-based, the goal is for health, but naturally the side effect is the compassion for the animals because you're not eating animals, and then also you're significantly improving the health of this planet because you have to utilize so much water, and then in order to raise cows, chicken, pork, and all the animal products, and then also all the animal agriculture alone has a greater effect on the greenhouse effect more than all means of transportation combined. Okay? Wow. And so if you're driving Prius and then eating meat, you're kidding yourself. Right? Save your money and then go get a real car because you're really not helping the environment.
Right.
But also, even you're a meat eater, just by one day a week, just having a meatless Monday, you can have a significant effect not only on your health, but also for the environment as well as for the animals also.
Meatless Monday.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good
I
way
like
to transition, I think.
that kind of I guess take on it where you can just sort of minimize how much meat you eat and sort of like lots of plants and a little bit of meat.
Yes.
Maybe that's the first step, or maybe just take a day off here and there, or learn how to. I know learning how to cook on a plant-based diet is a big deal. Understanding that transition process. We talked a little bit about it. Like what are foods that I can have that are going to make it a little bit easier for me.
I don't know.
to
Just
transition.
doing regular chicken breast with no seasoning and salad is pretty hard too. Because that's your typical like low carb diet, and I did that for like years.
Yeah, that's tough
So
too.
I think it's better than that.
Keto.
Maybe that's why it was easier for me to.
I
Switch
tell
over.
you, I didn't know anything about cooking, growing up, and then I spent majority of time in the library or in the lab, going to med school, and also as a resident, working at the hospital. But once I started going plant-based, I discovered there's so much different flavors, right? You know, even my rice or my soup, I use like 7 different kinds of spices, you know, whether it's a turmeric, whether it's oregano, whether it is, you know, ginger, cumin, coriander, you know, cayenne pepper, all these, which have a significant health benefit because they have anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-cancer properties. And so a lot of things that I eat, I have to be mindful. You know, I first think about, why am I eating that? Okay? How is that going to benefit me? How is that going to heal my body? And that's the first reason to eat the anything that I'm eating. Okay? And of course, you know, occasionally I may have you know, a vegan ice cream or something like that, but those are very rare occasions. And so, you know, what I try to practice and teach others is this: if you want to avoid heart disease, diabetes, cancer, they're all pretty much a similar approach. Number one is the nutrition. You got to focus on nutrition, nutrition, nutrition. As I always said, that most of us are driving an unleaded car. You're not going to put a diesel fuel in it, because you know that it's going to break. So that means you care more about your car than your own body, because you're always putting in things. Most people are putting in things that they know it's not good for their health. They won't do that for their car, but they do that to their body every single day. Right? And an exercise has a significant effect. Even, you know, walking 90 minutes in a day, you know, every day, or, you know, vigorous exercise for 40 minutes. And if you can't do that, even you doing that for, you know, 3 to 4 times a week, about 30 minutes, has a significant effect, because not only can it improve your cardiovascular system, but also it reduces the risk of developing cancer. Okay? And then stress management, which is another thing. Okay, these are all common things with all chronic disease. Because once you manage the stress, whether it is through yoga, meditation, or whether, you know, other means that you can reduce the stress, it has a direct effect on your gut bacteria also. Because the way you respond to stress determines what kind of microbiome that you're going to develop. And then what kind of microbiome that you have may influence the way you respond to stress also.
You said an interesting thing there that was like another light went off in my head, that most chronic diseases have the same source, right? The nutritional.
Yes.
And is it maybe true or half accurate to say that, you know, if I eat badly, there are a range of things that might affect me, right? And I might just be, okay, maybe it's heart disease, or maybe it's this disease or that disease. That just happened to be the one that I subjected myself to.
Yes.
But the source is basically almost all the same.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then there's all of these potential outcomes that I might individually, you know, express.
Yeah.
But
Because
they're all potential.
Because everyone's, you know, made slightly different.
Right.
Genetically, we're about 99% the same. But it's that 1% difference.
Yeah.
And so depending on the gene that you have, because you have a poor lifestyle, okay, because it's not just the diet. That's why I like to use the term lifestyle, because it's a diet, exercise, stress management, and avoiding toxins, right? And so depending on how you may develop heart disease, and then Bernie may develop cancer, and then Brian may develop, you know, autoimmune disease. And if you eat exactly the same.
Yeah.
But if you can avoid that, and everyone's eating healthy, exercising regularly, you can all avoid autoimmune disease, cancer, and heart disease.
That's almost a complete reversal of the way I think we typically think of it.
Yeah.
We think like, oh, I've got heart disease and go work backwards. It's like, no. It's nutrition, and then you work forwards from there.
Because everyone's mostly reductionist, right?
Right.
And so, you know, what they found was that even somebody with the cancer, okay, and they looked at you know, patients with breast cancer and then prostate cancer, and then they had the genes more likely to be turned on, so then they are developing breast cancer or prostate cancer. So then they changed their lifestyle. They changed their nutrition. They had them exercise, and they also did the stress management. The genes were turned off. Okay, just simply changing the lifestyle, you have the ability to control the genes. And then where they're finding that is your gut bacteria is actually the control center. So it always goes back to gut microbiome. They're the one producing the type of byproducts, metabolites, that is able to influence the DNA, turns them on and turns them off.
That's amazing.
That's
That's like an amazing way to think about it, that you've got a certain nutritional level that has to be met. If you don't, then there's all these expressions of it that might happen. Maybe it's cancer, maybe it's, you know, whatever, diabetes or whatever. And that instead of thinking of it, I have diabetes, no, I have a nutritional problem that expressed diabetes.
Yes.
Well, and we also have this symbiotic relationship that I think we all learn a little bit about symbiosis through school or whatever in biology or whatnot, but I don't think that the gut bacteria was a thing back when we were all in.
That's kind of newish, I think.
Yeah, it's new
Yeah.
because with the new technology, now they're able to identify all the different kinds of bacteria, right? And they just didn't have the technology. They knew it was important, but they didn't realize how it was important after they were able to really utilizing the modern technology to study the microbiome. I mean, we have about 100 trillion gut bacteria, right? 100 trillion. And it's 100 to 1. So we are more of bacteria and microbiome than ourselves, and we're a host, basically the host.
Yeah. So like if you think about it, like you have all of these complex nutritional chemicals and things happening inside you that you can't see, right? But you're really feeding a bacteria, which sets off this complex cascade of events inside your body, right? Yeah. And what we think about a lot of times from healthy is protein, carbs, my macros, right? But it's a whole different actual chemical reactions that are happening. Yeah. That's an amazing way to think about it.
Yeah, it is. I think that's probably why we all fell off into testing when we first started the show. We just kind of talked about it, but how do we know?
And that's the big thing is like the testing of
and
it.
That's why
seeing
we
the
have
results.
Our nitric Nutrinox here, and then our testing strips to make sure that after you take it, that actually has an effect.
Yeah. I think a lot of people know that the supplements they take now are just a lot of them are just kind of bogus, unfortunately, And so
Except for the
seeing
bro science guys,
the bro science stuff,
those guys will take
and seeing
anything.
stuff that we can actually take and use, and it's really, really good stuff is a big difference, actually. So now I know you guys have some other stuff coming out soon, right? Some different supplements. Yeah. So hopefully when we get that, we'll come back
so fairly soon we should be releasing what we call Nutra Antiox. And so the antioxidants, and this is what I've always been recommending. So there's always a reason why we're developing certain product. We don't develop it just because. And one of my recommendations to all my patients, whether they're having surgery, spine surgery, or stem cell therapy, I ask them to take turmeric with black pepper. Okay? Because it has such a strong antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effect, and also ginger. As well as emla. And most people don't know what emla is. And emla is an Indian gooseberry, which is 50 to 100 times more antioxidant than blueberries.
Wow.
So those are the three main things that I always ask my patients to take. One, there's so many patients don't like turmeric, okay? Or they may be taking a tablet, but they may not include the black pepper. But it also ginger comes separately. Or I tell them that you can buy the organic powder from Whole Food, right? store or any other grocery store. I'm not endorsing Whole Food necessarily, but then you can put it in your smoothie or you can put it in your rice. But some people they say I don't like the taste of it. Right. And I said, well, even you don't like a lot of people don't like the taste of medicine, but you still take it, right?
Yeah. Right.
And so we wanted to make it as easy as possible for them. And so that's why we combine all three of them, along with the black pepper, and so that it'll be easier for our surgical patients as well as our stem cell patients to consume the antioxidant.
Amazing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Amazing.
All right, so that should be coming out next week.
Really?
Oh, wow. That's soon.
Hey,
awesome.
we'll get some to test. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, I mean, I think honestly, like through that discussion, my view of how nutrition affects a person, like complete 180.
Yeah.
I mean, that is an amazing.
Yeah.
Thing.
I think it's important to remember that for all of our viewers and things like that too. That like exercise is part of it. Right? And I think all of us spent a lot of years to try to figure out how to get. For some people, it's physique. For some people, it's health. For some people, it's medical conditions that they want to reverse. Really, and nutrition, man.
Amazing. So we'll put the link on how to get this is on Amazon now, I think.
It is on Amazon.
So we'll put a link on how to get some Nutrinox if you guys are interested. And of course, it's at the gym, and you guys can get it.
And I always want to, now when people ask, so many Americans are in these. I mean, not just Americans, rest of the world, so focused on protein, right?
Yeah.
Yesterday we were walking through Whole Food, and there's this whole entire section, all wall of protein bars, right? And rather than thinking protein, you should first think about fiber. Okay, people should be obsessed with fiber. Okay, and we get plenty of protein if you eat fiber. Okay, the food that has fiber has plenty of protein, and that's going to help you save your life.
Interesting. That's amazing insight. Well, guys, I really appreciate the talk today. That was amazing
thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us again.
Anyway, all right, guys, take care.
Okay, take care.
Bye. Take care.